My name is Andrea Schietinger. I'm a faculty at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, and we are studying immune responses to cancers.
What's your main research interest?
My main research interest is to understand why specific immune cells called T cells, they are little immune cells in our body that are very important to eliminate viruses and bacteria when you get an infection, why those T cells don't work in cancer.
How does the immune system work in cancer?
It doesn't. That's why ultimately, in the end, the tumor grows, right? So every immune cell needs a little antigen on the surface, which is a little structure that the T cell, the immune cell, recognizes. And so the T cell sees that there is something on the cancer, and it's very specific, and in theory, the immune cell or the T cell should actually come and eliminate the cancer cell. But it doesn't work, and nobody really knows and understands why this is happening. Why is a T cell or an immune cell that sees, for example, the same structure on a viral infected or a bacterial infected cell, why is that working but not the T cell in the tumor context? That's the mystery, and that's why everybody is trying in tumor immunology to figure out where the breakdown really is. So we have then said, okay, we have to really tease out what makes these immune cells unresponsive. We have really zoomed into their DNA, we have untangled the DNA, we have tried to identify important proteins in the cell that shut down the T cell from working and so forth. And we try to restore an unresponsive T cell, and unfortunately many millions of researchers have tried with some success in some patients and in some cancer types, but by no way are we at the point where we can say we can use the immune cells or the T cells and we can eliminate every type of cancer in every patient. That's just not where we are, and that's why so much more research has to happen to really figure out how we reprogram these T cells more effectively.
And how is it relevant for type 1 diabetes?
Yes, exactly, because great question. So 5 years ago, we are like, okay, whatever we try to reprogram T cells for the tumor, it's clearly not working. So what are we missing? And so we were asking, well, where do you have a T cell or an immune cell that has the opposite problem, that is too functional and actually destroys tissue? And that's an autoimmune T cell, right? An autoimmune T cell is a T cell that goes into tissue and starts destroying normal tissue until you end up with autoimmune disease. And so we saw it as in cancer immunology, if we understand what an autoimmune T cell brings to the table that basically allows the destruction of entire tissue, maybe this is the information that we tumor immunologists have to really understand and define to then successfully reprogram the immune cells for the cancer. So in type 1 diabetes, you have these very specific beta cell specific T cells, immune cells. They go to the pancreas, they go into the islets, and they start destroying the islets. And so we took the islets out, we isolated the autoimmune T cells, and we basically asked, how does that autoimmune T cell, work? How and why? And so what we basically now have is the information what makes an autoimmune T cell an autoimmune T cell. Obviously in autoimmunity, type 1 diabetes, you want to eliminate those T cells. And that's what one part of my research is doing, to really figure out how can we target these T cells, how can we shut them down, how can we eliminate them. But now as a tumor immunologist, I have to think the opposite way. I have to say, okay, so now I'm using the autoimmune cells as a role model and take that information and reprogram the T cells for the cancer.